Bonjour class, today we're learning one more tense. It's technically referred to as a mood in verb world, but we're just going to call it a tense for the sake of it. And this new tense that we're going to be learning is called le conditionnel, or in English, the conditional. So in today's lesson, we're going to learn what is le conditionnel, when do you use le conditionnel, how do you form le conditionnel for regular verbs, and then the best part, how do you form le conditionnel for irregular verbs? And then lastly, what other tenses lead into le conditionnel? So which other ones are easily connected with this tense? So let's start off with what is the conditional. The conditional is most often used in phrases that include the word would in English. So when you put the word would before something else, you're using the conditional. Because the conditional, we see the word condition in there. So it means that you would do this if something else could happen. So it is conditional on another event. It is not definitely going to happen, so it is not future tense. And it is also not past, so it's just a whole different thing out there. So an example is, I would go to France. That's an example of the conditional because we see the word would here, and we know that something else would have to happen in order for this condition to come true. So right there, got our example. When do you use the conditional? So, utiliser le conditionnel pour décrire quelque chose que you would do, like we just talked about, or something that would happen. So they would travel if they could. This first part, would travel, that is an example of the conditional. You can also use the conditional for instances of politeness. So either using would in a more polite sense, like if you're ordering food at a restaurant, or to say what someone could do or should do. Those are all times when you would use the conditional as well. So for example, saying you should clean your room, should clean would be the conditional, or I would like some coffee. And this is using would in a more polite example. So using the conditional for verbs like vouloir makes it a little bit softer, because if you say I want some coffee, the waiter is more likely to spit in it than if you say I would like some coffee. So how do we form this? How do we put the conditional together? There's two steps for regular verbs. For the first step, you just keep the infinitive for regular ER and IR verbs. For RE verbs, you drop the E from the infinitive. So take the infinitive and add the imparfait endings. See, I told you we would need to know this later on. So this is how the conditional is going to look for regular verbs. So for example, parler, to speak. If you say, I would speak, je parlerai. You would speak, tu parlerais. He would speak, il parlerait. We would speak, parlerions. You, plural or formal, would speak, parleriez. And they would speak, parleraient. It's very important. What confuses a lot of people in English, we take the word and we add would before it for it to be conditional. In French, there's no word that goes beforehand. It's just changing the ending of the infinitive that turns it into the conditional. So all the parts highlighted in red, these are imparfait endings, so you should already know these. That's what makes it the conditional. There's no word for would in French. W-O-U-L-T. Okay? Then we see the same example for réussir. You have the infinitive over and over and over again, with just the corresponding imparfait ending. And then for attendre, because this is an RE verb, it's almost the same, but you just drop the E beforehand. It's easy to remember this rule because it looks really weird if you'd have an E-A-I-S. So that's an easy way to remember how to distinguish the RE verbs from ER and IR. So this is for regular verbs. Take the infinitive, add the imparfait ending. Pretty straightforward. Irregular verbs, also pretty straightforward, but a little bit more memorization, our favorite. You have to memorize irregular stems. For irregular verbs, this stem takes the place of the infinitive, but then you just add the imparfait endings at the end. So for example, for être, you would not say je être, you'd say je serai. So these stems here replace the infinitive when you are forming the conditional. So an example here would be if you're saying I would go or I'd go, instead of saying j'allerai, you would use this irregular stem, which would be j'irai. And for example, for faire, you would not say elle ferait, or at least not that spelling. It sounds similar though, elle ferait. Okay, so it's very important that we memorize these stems. There's just 12 of them, so it's a little bit less overwhelming than some of our memorization rounds, but it's just really important to memorize these. At the very least, we should be able to memorize aller, avoir, être, and faire, because I think we can all agree those are our 4 most common verbs out of all of these, but of course you do need to know all of these moving forward. And lastly, what other tenses lead into le conditionnel? There's something very common in French. We use it too in English, but in French it's even more common. And it's a structure that goes si plus l'imparfait leads to le conditionnel. Just a reminder, si in French means if. So if you have the word if and then a verb in the imparfait, the conditional will come up next. And this makes sense. We know this in English. We use this in English. Like, for example, if I had more time, I would read more books. So we have the word if here, si, had, and this is imparfait because this is the past tense, and because it is not specific, it is over a period of time, or it's repeated, or it's a little bit vague. And then here we have the conditional would read. Okay, so we know this pattern in English. We just need to apply it to our French. So if you want to translate the sentence, it would be si j'avais plus du temps, je lirais plus des livres. So we have had translated as avait, if translated as si, would read translated as lirais, and that's how we form what we call this a si clause. So that would be what this is. This can also appear in the reverse order. So although this order right here, si plus l'imparfait leads to the conditional, although this is the most common order to have this in, it can also be reversed. So for example, instead of saying if I had more time, I would read more books, you could also say I would read more books if I had more time. It's more or less the same thing. So it would be translated similarly here, just flipping it around, je lirais plus des livres si j'avais plus du temps. Okay, important things to note about these sentences that we've already talked about. You'll notice the conditional in English is 2 words, would read, and in French it's just 1 word. We have the infinitive and then the imparfait ending at the end. So hopefully this tense is a little bit more straightforward to memorize. If anything, brush up on your imparfait endings, because without those and without the irregular stems, those are really the 2 most difficult things about memorizing the conditional. So go back through your notes if you need to, and I look forward to practicing this with you in class.